live or not.
Yeah.
Let me look on Facebook and see.
On the Facebook and see.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Awesome.
y'all. Good evening. We are a little 3 minutes past 7. We had some tech issues and still working a few things out, but we are here. Good evening. Good evening. And welcome to the Fireside Chat Corporate Vulnerability from Superwoman to Sheo. We are happy to have this conversation tonight, and we're going to make a disclaimer right off the top. We are not DEI certified peeps, but we are women who have worked in the corporate space and have dealt with a lot of things, and feel like we have a voice. And we want to be able to share our experiences, but also give tips and tools on how we've navigated those spaces successfully, and help other women of color be able to amplify their voice in the corporate space as well. We know it's rough, but the goal for tonight is to show that we are a community of people that we can bond and connect together through our experiences and be able to inspire and impact one another through that. Okay, through the discussion tonight. Please, when you come in, let us know where you're coming from. We love to see all the different cities and states. And please share your thoughts and your comments and share this out to other folks because they may need to hear this message as well and know that they are also not alone. Okay. So we'll start as we always do with little quick introductions of who we are. We have one other partner who is working out some things and will join us shortly, Miss Sharonda Ford. But until gets here, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Danny, you want to go first and Kim right after?
Yeah.
Sure. So my name is Danny White. Hello, everyone. Glad you are all here with us today. I am a CEO of a digital marketing agency. I'm also an author and a business strategist.
All right.
Yes. And hello, my name is Kimberly Parker. I am the CEO and one of the therapists at Revive to Thrive Wellness Center. We are a group practice in the state of Texas. I'm also a coach and really enjoy coaching clients inside of the state of Texas as well as outside of Texas. And I offer continuing education and trainings for individuals who want to increase their knowledge on cultural humility. And because I just decided I have a lot of things I want to do, I'm also a third-year doctoral student working on my degree in counselor education and supervision. So all the things counseling and coaching and training, all that good stuff.
Yes, wonderful. And my name is Trinetta Powell, and I am the CEO of Reveal and Restore Counseling, which is another mental health group practice that is in the state of Texas. And also, I am a mindset coach for women of color who struggle with perfectionism and imposter syndrome, and helping them learn how to set boundaries and make themselves a priority and amplify their own voices, and also provide wellness retreats in the corporate sector as well. So that's kind of a little bit of what I do. And now we have our other um, colleague, sister, friend, Sharonda Ford. We're just doing introduction. Sharonda, you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are?
Hey y'all, I am Sharonda Ford. I am a God girl, a CEO, a wife. I am a relationship strategist, author, and I just love having conversations about things that impact other women and strong women. I own a group practice called Beyond the Mass Trauma and Wellness, and I enjoy working specifically doing coaching and strategy calls here globally and domestically, or here domestically and globally. I enjoy helping women strategize, build relationships, and because of my 20 plus years HR background and experience, I enjoy working with corporations to get them to identify trauma and see how it impacts performance through their wellness programs and EAPs. Hey,
Yeah,
Yes, come on, introduction.
exactly. Right.
wait,
Look.
wait, 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 wait. Let me just add too. Let me just add though, because I am a God girl. I come into y'all churches and I help y'all set up these programs so that you are not marginalizing Christians,
Right.
telling them that their anxiety can be healed with just prayer when they have real
Yes.
trauma that needs to be
Yes.
healed. Okay, so I
Hmm.
also with churches and pastors, helping them to build mental health programs in their church that incorporate and integrate faith and mental health. All right, that's where we
Right.
at.
That's a whole nother fireside
Exactly.
chat on the church and mental health. We'll table that one
Yeah.
Yes.
maybe for next
Yes.
time. But yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, tonight we're talking about the corporate sector and the corporate environment and the mindset that is present for women of color. Now, in my practice, I see a lot of high professional women in the corporate sector, and one of the biggest things that they tell me is they have a hard time speaking up for themselves. Like they're in these rooms, a lot of times they are the only person of color in the room, and I have been in that space, whether during my schooling, have been the only one in college, or even in when I entered the professional world, I've been the only Black person in the room, the only Black counselor at the agency. And sometimes it's hard to speak up and say how we feel and what's going on and feel like we're being seen in those spaces. So I guess we can kind of start the conversation off with what are some of the common challenges that y'all feel like women of color have in the corporate space?
Yeah. I think you already hit on like such a huge point, which is being the only one. I know I won't even go off on my tangent as it relates to um, being in higher ed, and my experience has been interesting as being the only Black person in my cohort, and then also just seeing what comes up as being like an instructor of color, a supervisor of color. There's so many dynamics that go there, and a lot of the time I know we were brought up to make sure that you are going that much harder than everyone else, right? Like just to get to that next level or just to be considered. So there's a lot of that perfectionism that tries to come up of you have to be that much better, you have to work that much harder to get even somewhat of the acknowledge that maybe your peer might get. There's a lot that goes into that. And so I think a lot of the time the experience in these different settings is isolation. It breeds perfectionism and really little room for any mistakes because there are already individuals who are counting you out simply by looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. Yes, Christine, I'm sorry, Long. Yes, we always have to prove that we are better, smarter. And I just like what Kimberly was saying, that perfectionism piece and I feel like even that comes even from the messages at home that we get, that we were told, because I mean, I don't know about y'all, my parents or even my grandparents grew up in a sector where we were told you go to work, you keep your head down,
Exactly.
you kind of almost to the point where you need to stay invisible
Exactly.
and don't bring a lot of attention to yourselves. And you have to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's and send the email. Don't do it verbally. All these things to make sure that you are always in line, that you don't cross the line.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't cross the line. If you cross the line, then you may that fear, right? That fear of you may lose the job or the consequence, the reprimand that may come from that. Yeah. Anybody else have a take on some things that may be a challenge?
I think one of the challenges is like just the lack of representation.
Mm,
Um, Not really having other Black women who are in leadership or who are in executive positions to
mhm,
look up to. Like for
mhm,
me, I have a tech background, so many times I'm the only woman in the room, period, because most of the people in the room are men. And not really knowing how to navigate those type of spaces because you don't really have examples to look up to and to show like the different perspectives, how to make decisions, how to speak up for yourself,
mhm,
how to make sure that your opinions are heard and that your suggestions are taken into consideration on projects and things like that. It's kind of like a blank slate, really, sometimes, because the representation is not there. So you're kind of starting from scratch when it's all you. And so that's been like my challenge in working in certain spaces and just coming up in my 20s and now into my 30s, like trying to understand like where exactly do I fit in or do I fit in at all? And should I
mhm,
just stand out? Right.
mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Danny. And I think for me, it started in my house, right? This corporate
Mhm,
vulnerability, this
mhm,
conversations with my grandmother, and the things that she kind of warned me about. And I kept on these rose-colored glasses, like, no, Nana, not them, or not me, or had this kind of hope that things would be different. But the same way, I started off at a HBCU. I transitioned or transferred to PWC,
mhm,
where I was uh, a real minority. I was called the N word. I ended up transferring out of there because of that. And then I became
mhm,
um, a little distant, right? Because these
mhm,
experiences had begun to shape me. And then I sat in that space, just like you're saying, being the only black one in the classroom, being the only person of
mhm.
color in the in HR for years, just traveling and just being in that space. But
Yeah,
even in profession, like Trinetta said, we're in training sometimes,
yeah,
and being one of the only or very, very few
yeah,
minorities, when you are
mhm,
talking about training on trauma, where you have to
exactly.
work together in a cohort, or you have to come
Mhm,
together in an intensive and do treatment, we're
yeah,
misunderstood because our
mhm,
trauma is not seen through the same lens that we experience it. And
Right.
if our trauma can't be seen through the same lens that we experience it in an
mhm,
everyday setting, it
mhm.
absolutely is misinterpreted, therefore
Right.
Yeah,
misrepresented in the
absolutely.
corporate setting.
Correct.
Very
Absolutely.
true.
Yeah, those cultural norms are just totally different, and the biases that come from the ideology of what they expect for us to be or how they expect for us to behave or act is just totally different from who we truly are authentically.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm,
hmm
Yeah.
Um, what do y'all think about? I hear this a lot too. One of the challenges of tokenism, when we are the
mhm.
only one in the room, and they want to place the responsibility on us to educate everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me jump in right here. I
Mhm.
I think one of the things is I've always played it to my advantage when I felt like it was advantageous for me, right?
Mhm,
But I
mhm,
also knew the role that I was being put in. So I made sure that I chose how I responded to that invitation. So
mhm.
sometimes when I was invited to do something because I was a token, I RSVP that I would be there. But other times when I didn't feel it was advantageous for me, or I felt too disrespected, demeaned, or
Mhm.
belittled, then I chose not to show up. Because what I'm not going to ever compromise is who I am as a person.
Yeah,
So it doesn't
right.
matter what your agenda is, I'm not forwarding your agenda.
Mhm,
However, if I have an opportunity to share and build up and uplift and
Mhm.
educate,
Mhm.
then I don't mind sitting in that space. But I will not RSVP to the token seat
yeah,
if
yeah,
you are going to, if you're in, if I anticipate that you are
mhm,
sitting me there to belittle, demean, or degrade me.
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
But
feel
it takes a strong personality to be able to take that perspective, though.
yeah.
Someone who is confident in who they are, who has really
Mhm,
good emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
um,
yeah,
and that's not it. That's not all of us
yeah,
yet. That's
yeah,
not. It's not. Let's
yeah.
be honest. It's not
Mm-hmm.
all of us yet.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us
Mm-hmm.
still have a lot of work to do to build greater emotional intelligence,
Mhm,
which
mhm.
um, to be able to heal from our trauma, to have really good self-awareness of knowing what your triggers are and how you're going to react and respond, having really good conflict resolution skills. Everybody doesn't have that. So
Yeah,
sometimes when people are placed in the position of tokenism, they feel a lot of pressure to perform again. It's
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
exactly.
And that pressure can lead to, how am I supposed to behave? How am I supposed to represent my culture? How do I stay true to who I am as a woman of color, as a Black woman, and
Mhm,
also provide the education and make this a positive impact, and not just like Sharonda was saying, go ahead
yeah,
and execute their agenda.
Right.
But
exactly.
I just want to ask this part. What part of being able to respond to that, or how maybe people who view it differently, is based on where you're located, right? Because you're
Oh,
raised in the South, you're
yes.
from Alabama. I'm
Alabama.
raised in the North. I'm from Jersey, 5 minutes from Manhattan. And
Mhm.
so I had this melting pot experience. Not that I was exempt to
Yeah.
the prejudice, because I had my fair share, but I
Mhm.
think for me, even, with my peers and family who are from the South, I noticed the difference in how
Mhm.
we respond to some of those things, because we just attack it. I'm sorry, address it a little bit
Yeah.
more aggressively. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's just defense. What do you think?
I definitely believe there's a difference between the North and the South. I
Mhm.
mean, in the South where I'm from, I mean, lynching. We're dealing with that piece of um, racial
Yeah.
abuse. So we're
Mhm.
afraid to speak up because of what that backlash is going to be.
Mhm.
So up north, I feel like there was a little bit more freedom. There's a little bit more, like you said, there's that cultural melting pot where we didn't have that. I mean, and where I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, we still were very separated. They're still not segregated, but still separated. I mean, we have home of Mardi Gras, but we have a Black Mardi Gras Association and we have a white Mardi Gras Association. To this day, it is still that way.
Mhm.
Nothing has changed
Mhm.
in that. So yeah, it's still tough
Mhm.
to think that you can be able to have the voice when you've been silenced for so long in the South.
Mhm. 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 It's a know
Mhm.
your place mentality.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Hmm.
I also think bandwidth has plays a role in all this as well, because like days I might have it to speak on whatever the issue is, and
Hmm.
some days I may not. And so I think bandwidth has a lot to do with it. I also think about, for example, this training that I do with one of my colleagues, one of my friends who I consider to be a white ally. Like, we intentionally are sharing the burden of speaking on the issue of cultural humility, because it is such a heavy topic. Yet, going back to what Sharonda said, like, our mission and vision is to make sure that there are more culturally humble counselors out there. And so together we're sharing in the burden in that. And so that might not be the case for every project, but I also think like bandwidth must be taken into consideration. And like Sharonda said, how much does in their eyes being the token fit into your purpose and your calling, where you're going to
Hmm.
still show up as your most authentic self and walk into that, while maybe in the background they think they have gotten you by being their token X, Y, and Z.
Correct. I agree.
Mhm.
Bandwidth plays a big part in it. Sometimes we feel like it, and sometimes we don't. And we
Mhm.
have the right to choose.
Exactly.
We have the right to choose.
Mhm.
A lot of us think that we don't. We feel the pressure that
Mhm.
we have to say yes.
Mhm.
But you don't have to say yes. You can say no. I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable with doing that or taking on that project or what have you. It may seem hard, but your no still can stand.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
our trauma, just like you said, plays a good bit of comes into play with that bandwidth, or I could always say capacity, right? Because
Mhm.
there are times if we're in a heightened social climate, I won't
Mhm.
have the same capacity that I have
Exactly.
thing
Exactly.
when we're in
Mhm.
a less heightened
Mhm.
Mhm.
social climate.
Mhm.
So that capacity, I know, like, yeah, I'm not going to speak on that, right? Or I choose
Mhm.
to not stay silent, just not engage in some of those conversations because they're hurtful for me, and I
Mhm.
know where they'll take me. So just
Mhm.
Mhm.
Kim, just to that bandwidth and that capacity check, to know that. And from a place of corporate leadership, if there are any corporate leaders out there that are listening or watching, it's
Mhm.
important to understand the cultural makeup, right, or experiences
Yes.
Mhm.
of people on your
Yes.
team, so that you can
Mhm.
understand the bandwidth and the capacity that they have when you're expecting them to show up at places, right? We've all
Mhm.
had the experience where, because
Yeah.
of who you are, depending on who a customer is, and a customer may be
Mhm.
a business partner, it may be an outside
Mhm.
customer or an internal customer, they choose you, right? This is a little bit less than token, but it's just kind of like a level of relatability. Like, I'm going to let
Mhm.
you that because I know you can relate to that. But if we get these allies, like Kim is mentioning, from a corporate leadership perspective, you'll
Mhm.
find that you'll know how to best utilize your team in a way that is conducive for everyone because you're understanding them and learning more about their cultural experiences that
Mhm.
shape how they respond to these norms or how
Mhm.
you don't, as a
Yes.
non-BIPOC person, respond to those norms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to say too, like to Sharonda's point, of and Kim's point about the allies. I think yes, we should, make relationships with allies, people who are white, people who are in other cultures, who are
Mhm.
other races.
Mhm.
But I think all of the onus should not be on us to do the educating. I think
Exactly.
part of that education is also making sure that that other person is doing the work within themselves and around themselves
Mhm.
to understand like it has to be a two-way street rather than just one way like me doing all the talking, right?
Exactly.
And I think from my experience is not only like the cultural diversity and like black versus white, but it's also like the gender diversity as
Yeah.
well,
Uh-huh.
female
Mm.
versus male, and like being able to educate the other party but also making sure
Exactly.
that like that other party is doing the work that they need to do internally. And if they're in a position of leadership or part of the C suite, like that they're also getting feedback and that they're making sure that they take that feedback to other people, members on their team, to implement plans that will affect
Mhm.
everybody. I think it's a much broader like discussion
Yeah.
than just filling one seat or filling one department. I think
Mhm.
Mhm.
every person on the team, every person within the department is required to do the
Yeah.
same work. It's not just one or
Mhm.
the other.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It starts with leadership. When
Yes.
we're trying to change the culture in the corporate work environment, if you are in a management position or a team lead, it starts with you. How you model will impact your team and the cohesiveness of your team, the performance that they're going to put out for you in in the corporate sector, for sure. So having some empathy for the people on your team, and that begins with doing some of the things that Sharonda and Dan are saying. You have to have an
Mhm.
understanding of what their background is and
Exactly.
who they are. And when you can express
Mhm.
empathy and understanding, it's going to build connection on the team. And you build connection on the team, you're going to have a positive output.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another point on allies,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I do think that in some situations, people do not have the right definition of what an ally is.
Come
Hmm.
on, tell
Yeah.
us.
Ally,
Yeah.
an ally is not necessarily like, okay, you just agree with everything that I say because I'm of another race.
Hmm.
It,
Mm-mm.
and an
Mm-mm.
ally also is not,
Hmm.
oh, I want to give like my empathy or my sympathy to this group of
Hmm.
people or this gender because of
Exactly.
like the trauma that they have experienced as a group. Like that's not true
Mhm.
allyship, right?
Right.
It's we
Exactly.
don't you don't want to take it on as a charity case. Like you want to make
No.
sure that they are a true companion and like a true ally in the sense that they're going to
Hmm.
make sure that your voice is heard as well. Like they're going to make sure that you get the fair shake of opportunities, especially if they're in a leadership position. Like I think that's more of the definition of like what a true ally is than some
Hmm.
of the definitions and like actions that I've seen people take, where it's just like, oh, this is like my
Absolutely.
token black friend that I work with at work, like it's not that. That's not allyship. So yeah, I think
Mhm.
there's still a deeper conversation about what allies are supposed to be and how they can impact the workforce. But I just want to
Absolutely.
make that point. Be careful of like the allies that you have around you.
Hmm.
Exactly, exactly. I love that. I love that so much. And I personally am just so particular about that. I have to watch this person for a while
Hmm.
before there's even
Yes.
any discussion about it.
Hmm.
Like how do you just normally operate? What are your efforts? What are you doing? What do you believe? Also in your language and how that person speaks, because the truth can only be hidden for so long.
Right.
And so I think it's also about what are you, and then as therapists, of course, we're like analyzing everything, right? And so we've already got that on our side, and we're like, you may not know I'm observing, but I'm observing.
Correct.
And how, yeah, how much work are you doing on your own? How much are you educating yourself?
Hmm.
Because once again, it can be a burden. It's a lot of bandwidth,
Hmm.
it can take a lot. So where's your bandwidth as that person's your ally? But yeah, no performative allyship. No, I don't want to see, you just posting stuff and that be what you're doing to be an ally. What kind of work are you doing? How are you submerging yourself in doing the good and hard work, especially when there can be a lot of backlash in being an ally. So are you
Yes.
willing to fight that backlash?
Yes.
Are you willing to stand on your ground even when your family members and your friends are judging you and criticizing you for your work as an ally?
Mhm.
That is where the truth lies, I believe.
Yeah,
That
I'd
Oh,
agree with that.
that's good. I just want to add this, Kim. And I actually just tagged her in the post, but I have had my
Mhm.
supervisor, I think, has done a very good job. And I know God placed me there so that I can deal with some of my biases, right? Because of my experiences. But it was important to me how she took to me and us and having these deep conversations of understanding, right? Where
mhm.
he's talking about it. And when we started realizing there, I mean, there are just things that we don't even recognize are happening, right? And so we were doing her dissertation research, and I was, the way I was doing it looked like it just so happened that I was putting all of one kind of person here, right? And the other person had it differently. And so we talked about, I was like, yeah, I don't know how that happens, because if I don't have it alphabetically, then I can't manage it, right? And so like, alphabetically, and I was like, it's like, oh, it just so happens that alphabetically, they all were in this one class, right? And
Mm.
so had we not had that dialogue, it could have
Mhm.
looked like it was just all in that class. But I know that there's freedom in the conversations we have. We're able to have
Mhm.
that from that
Mhm.
clinical
Yeah.
perspective. And then prior to that, which I say was the best job I ever had, and I tagged her, my previous supervisor before I went into this work, Cherie, she always respected those spaces, that BIPOC space, that, hey, like even saying to me, and hey, almost pointing out, like, this is going to be this. And she was
Mhm.
respected and very, very
Mhm.
understanding of my
Mhm.
discomfort in some of those
Mhm.
spaces that she sent me to, right? Because I'm still going to
Mhm.
as sometimes the only Black person, and I'm going into places in the role I was playing and what that looked like. But those are people who I hold in esteem, right? Because they helped me be more comfortable. And so, Trinetta, when you say like getting there are a couple of people, very few, but people who
Mhm.
reminded me that I deserve to be in the room,
Mhm.
that people that are not BIPOC, that
Mhm.
reminded me that I have something to offer and I deserve to be
Yeah.
in the room, and that
Mm.
Yeah.
what I offer has value. So it took a long time to get there, but it took
Mhm.
working through that in therapy, and then having a couple allies, right?
Yes.
People who care about me and my community,
Yes.
who
Yeah.
stood by me to help me to kind of break into or break out of the fear
Yeah.
of showing up, feeling small in
Mhm.
large white
Yeah.
space.
Mhm. Yes. Amen to that. So, ally means advocate, not
Yeah.
just.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you going to
Yeah.
advocate for us in those spaces and not just sit back and just talk about what you agree with behind closed doors, but out front?
Exactly.
And speaking for
Exactly.
us in the public spaces too. So yeah,
Absolutely.
good conversation on that. What happens when we're in a space where we don't have an ally um, in the space, and we are just there, that one person of color in the space, or maybe it's a few of us, but we feel the microaggressions in the room, in the conversations in the workplace, and how do you navigate that?
I want to
Now,
hear
I
Danny.
can speak
Oh,
on that because I experienced it I'm sure we all have experienced it. I'm not the only one. When I worked for the state here in Texas, I remember
Mhm.
vividly. I moved to Texas in 2010. So when election time rolled around, this was around the re-election of President Obama. And there was just heavily political jargon around the office. I was the only Black therapist in the space, counselor in that office. We had some support staff that were of color. Um, and it was just really tense. And I remember it's like, okay, what do? You're getting emails that you shouldn't be getting from coworkers that they're spreading around. The conversation in the break room is real tense, and just making sly comments and things. And so, in that time, because I had some allies in that workspace at that time, and it's like, okay, what do you do? And we did go and report things to our management, who was a woman who was not of color. And because of that, they did have a diversity team come in and do a training with our staff, but it didn't do any good. It didn't do any good sitting at that table and listening to, and the team that came in were white women, who were allies and advocating, and the information that they were bringing was great. The conversation that they initiated was wonderful. But when you're sitting in a room across from your counterparts, my support person, my admin that supported me was a white woman who had been dealing with cancer, that I went in her office and prayed for her to be healed and well, and she appreciated it. But she sits across from me and say, "Well, I'm just a little racist." He's like, what do you do with that? Right. I'm just a little racist. And that was heavy for me. That was heavy to digest, and to be in the room and no one's blinking an eye. Like nothing's wrong with that. Was troubling. So for me, it's when you hear it, management tries to bring in something, but then the something that they bring in still doesn't work. What do you do? What do you do? And in that space, I was just fed up and I was tired at that point. And I knew that just wasn't the environment for me. It was causing too much stress. It was causing burnout and anxiety for me. And it just wasn't healthy, and it was toxic. So I knew I had to create a plan to leave that space. So it was hard. It was hard. But what do you do when you've been in those spaces where you bring it to management, they try to bring in a resource, or maybe they don't, but nothing changes?
Yeah, I feel like my answers are not very well. I mean, they're real. For me, it was like leaving that job. You know, when we were told that, yeah, the behind the scenes conversation was you've got too many Black people on your team, and so we couldn't hire that person who was a great candidate because they're Black. You guys, there was already two of us, so that was like way too many. You know, way too many of us. So they couldn't hire that really qualified candidate. So for me, it was transitioning to a new office, but like oftentimes and I don't know if it's my experience of like well, I think you can find it wherever you go. I mean, racism is good and well wherever you go. But you know, I'm pretty much a California native, right? I moved here to Texas 8 years ago, so it was always that I was like the only Black person at the school and in the classroom and on the job and all of that. And this whole ally thing is personally new to me, so that's why I get so crazy about it sometimes. And it's very few and far in between. I can count on less than one hand how many allies I have, because the job is real and it is hard. And so I think for me, it was just about removing myself from those toxic situations. And then eventually it was like, okay, you're going to become your own boss. And now this is like my mission and my vision is like, okay, I didn't have power and control in those situations, but I get to roll and run with how I want to run this place right here. How Revive to Thrive Wellness Center, we are going to denounce we're going to denounce racism. We're going to denounce those things that do not serve people of color well. And then my bigger contribution is like, for those counselors in training, how are we going to equip them to help them provide safe spaces? Since we know the statistics tell us that individuals are going to end up in a cross-cultural relationship, how are we preparing those who are coming up so that we can ensure that they're going to be in a safe place? Because I know there were plenty of times where I didn't have it, whether it be as an employee or whether it be as a client, and I'm going to do my very small part to try to make a change in that. So I think it's about how can you take away your power and control? Is that removing yourself? Is that advocating for yourself by going to the office that handles matters such as this? Which I did that, and similar to you, Trinetta, it did not go anywhere, but just a little slap on the wrist, or even being told, well, that wasn't really said. And so it's about how can you take your power and control back in these situations that feel very powerless. And I saw Christine said she relied upon her faith and her support group outside of the company as well, which I find that to be extremely imperative. Is like, what do your natural supports look like when the people on the job fail you?
Yes, you definitely need a support system outside of the workplace.
Yep.
You're gonna say
Christine
something,
also
Sean?
said, no, she just also said sometimes it's just time to shake the dust off your feet
Uh-huh.
and move on, whether a new company, your own company, or another department. And so I think that it does depend on, and everyone has the capacity of where they can or when they can leave. We know that everyone can't, but
Right.
I know that I've made those decisions too, that I'm just not going to be a part of this culture because I don't want to do more harm to my people. That's just a
Mhm.
reality. And so, sitting in that white space for decades where we got to see people get passed over, just like you're saying, Kim,
Mhm.
I always use this example that, and I use it in many settings. I'm not going to be specific. And I use it in church settings sometimes, depending on the group.
Yeah.
One of the or corporate, right? Because one of the things is that when there are two of us, right? So just say we
Mhm.
already know, just like you said, Kim, there's just two of us,
Mhm.
and so or
Mhm.
there just God forbid there's three of us in this department. If
Mhm.
by chance
Mhm.
we sit together, right? So if
Oh,
Trinetta,
yeah.
Kim, Danny, and Sharonda are together, and we're
Uh-huh.
all in this at the same event because we work for the same
Mhm.
company and we just happen to be peers, and we
Yes.
sit at
Mhm.
the same table, then we're congregating or we're
Yes.
segregating
Exactly.
ourselves
Yes.
or we are cliquish or we are
Mhm.
not hanging out with the other people. But if
Mhm.
Becky and Amy and Mary are all together and the four of them sit together, they just sitting together, right? And so
Mhm.
we are frowned upon, right? Like, because, well, do you realize that every time we go somewhere and we're together, you guys kind of get together?
Mhm.
Do you
Mhm.
realize that every time we go somewhere and we're together, that you guys are together? It just looks
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
when it's
Mhm.
us. And I have
Yeah.
been offended, right? I
Mhm.
used to be offended by that, but I recognize that it's the power that I bring when I'm in a
Yes.
group.
Yeah.
So it just probably seems more dudamus, right, or dynamic when
Mhm.
it's this many,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
there's power in numbers and there's some type of intimidation there that is not spoken, right? And then
Right.
we have
Mhm.
this kind of angry black women, and I'm gonna let it go, but I'm gonna address it, right? Where they see us and they
Yeah.
say, angry black women. And I even teach my therapists who are not BIPOC, who are white therapists, that it's okay to address it when you are working with a black woman. This is that cultural competency, because when I said, because I am angry. I am an angry
Mhm.
black woman this week
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
have a brother or a husband or uncle who I don't know if he's going to come home, because I'm
Right.
afraid to sit in my living room and watch TV because this we could go down. But it's okay to acknowledge that, yes, I am angry, right?
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, because you could be angry if I'm
Mhm.
walking in the park
Absolutely.
eating potato chips, but I can't be angry
Yeah.
if my loved one gets killed in the living room. So we have
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
just have those conversations without fear. And I think
Yeah.
when you can rely on your faith, like Christine is saying, and you can say that the God that I know and I serve is going to protect me, I would go into workplaces and say, I don't work for anyone here. I'm on a divine assignment. And
Right.
that's what
Yeah.
helped me to have my voice, because I
Yeah.
knew that there was nothing anybody could do that God didn't allow me. And I just had made up my mind I was not going to be
Mhm.
a part of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
I just was not going to let people abuse me because of my race.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. And it takes time to get to that place. You have to do some
Yeah.
work to get to that place where you're confident in who you are and who you serve, to be able to show
Mhm.
up like that. I've done the same thing, and they've taken that as, what is it? Like I didn't
Oh,
care.
mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Like,
Mhm.
I was not
Mhm.
invested in the company and performing well. When it wasn't that, it's like I hear what you're saying, but I know who I serve, and I understand I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to do that job to the best of my ability. But because you're just not jumping the hoops and doing all the remorseful things, that they want you to do, it just is frowned upon. But building good emotional intelligence will get you to that place.
I
And
think
relationships.
also, yeah, and
Mhm.
I agree. I think also, though, and this might not be a super politically correct answer, but I think knowing your legal rights as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you
It is.
are a high performing person, or you are in charge of a
Mhm.
large team,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
you bring a lot of money into the company, like
Mhm.
all of those things you also want to take into consideration because companies are afraid to lose these types of people.
Mm-hmm.
So you can all, I mean, you can also play, and I've done this in my career too, like just knowing like your legal rights and what you can and cannot do. And sometimes you have to step outside of your company's HR or whatever to put those into play. I mean, companies are afraid of lawsuits. They don't want to be sued. So if that's what you have to do to do that, then that's what it takes. And I think sometimes we're like afraid to kind of go
Oh
that
yeah.
far,
Yes.
but I don't think we should be afraid to go that far. Yeah, it's this is only from my experience. I haven't done all of the other things that you guys have said.
No,
I
but
am quick to be like, look, I can leave today. We
Yeah.
we don't have to play this game. And because
You,
I know
Danny?
they do not
You?
want to yes. Yes. And because I know that like if you are a high performing person, like the numbers speak for themselves, numbers don't lie, right? And so they don't want to lose a person like that because, or if you hold the keys to something within the organization, they don't want to lose that person because they know that you can go tell everything, right? So it's their loss and your loss too. Like it's not like you're the only one losing. So if people know that, then they can, make better decisions.
no, but you are absolutely right. If you know that company policy backwards
Yeah.
and forwards, it will
Mhm.
save you.
Yes, 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 yes. Christine says she has an honorary HR degree. I like
Hi, Miss Christine.
An honorary HR degree. Let's see.
Oh,
Tina
Tina.
has a question.
Good question.
Do you all think the HR department is really for employees or the company?
So listen,
I
they changed the name of HR, right? It's called human resources, but back in the day it was called personnel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was something personal about personnel, and now they're human resources, like they're resources, not necessary advocates, right, or
Mm-hmm.
allies.
Yes.
And so people have to be careful. I think that's where one, I keep thinking about the confidence in uncertainty coach, right, and strategist, and how I just laugh, right, because Trinetta is always like boosting that, like injecting folk with confidence. But I think that that's a part of that, right? Is that you want to know, just like Danny said, what your legal rights are, and you want to know who is for you in those rights, right? And if that means stepping out, if that means doing some research, because companies are responsible, leadership is responsible for the bottom line. And sitting in HR, what I learned, people like they could have told me we was getting laid off. They could have told me we were this. Listen, the same way you protect your job is the way other people have to protect their job. I have been a part of closures that were affecting family.
Yeah.
But because of integrity in the role that I'm in, I still can't have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to recognize that the people that work at the company they got bills to pay, like you have bills to pay, and so they are going to protect themselves the same way you would protect yourself. And if you want to protect yourself at work, you might want to think about how to protect yourself at work, because there are just some things that people are not going to be able to tell you.
Yeah.
And those are them. So HR is for the company because HR is the company. In most cases. In
most cases. Now, every now and then, you will run across, I have an HR representative who is just kind-hearted, who is willing to help you depending on what the situation is and give you the tools that you need to be able to advocate for yourself or what have you. That does happen every now and then, but ultimately I agree with Sharonda. They are all for protecting the company because they have to. That's just what their role is.
Yeah.
And that's just the person, Trinetta. The person was HR is still for the
Not the
person.
department.
Yes,
It's
yes.
a person, just the rest.
Yes.
And yes.
Trinetta is not speaking to the department, Tina.
No,
Trinetta
I'm just
is
talking
speaking
to the
to the anointed folk that God sits in the department to be able to advocate for his people, because the words say, touch not my anointing and do my okay, so I'm not gonna go there, but let y'all know that God will providentially, sovereignly, and strategically place people in places so that you can be protected. You just got to
Correct.
identify who and where they
Who they
are.
are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, wonderful.
Get
This has
the
been
get the
great.
looking. Get the looking.
Yes. Yes, but yeah, circling back a little bit, but yes, I agree. Some of the work environments are toxic, and not everybody can leave immediately. And we understand that because we
Mm-mm.
still have households and responsibilities. When I left my state job, I didn't have another job in place. I just knew that by my faith in God, that He was moving me somewhere else. That my season had been up in that space, and I was confident in my decision. Now, my counterparts could not understand it for the life of them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for them to understand. It wasn't. And it was the best move I made because, I mean, look at me now. I'm just saying. Over here spreading confidence and getting people right.
Yes.
And doing what I feel like I'm called to do, what I love doing. And I wouldn't have been able to do that in that space.
Yeah.
You're on the right track, sis. You're on the right track.
I'm on the right track. I'm in that master's program, I know.
Yes.
Right? Yes. That's for another discussion. We'll see y'all back to the link later. We'll see y'all back to that later. But yeah, some people can't move. So you may have to plan a strategic move. Sometimes that takes talking with some people outside of the agency to help you be able to create that plan. And I'm gonna say I'm a therapist, and so is Sharonda and Kimberly. Y'all, if the environment is to the level of toxicity where you are truly burned out and you are losing focus and concentration, and it is hard to be in that space. It's hard to get up and go to work. I've been crying going to work. Okay, when it gets to that space, there is something called FMLA.
Use it or lose it.
Use it. So you need to use your FMLA and take some time off to breathe, get you a therapist, schedule an appointment, help them, let that therapist help you work out some things. Now, most therapists are a little different from state to state. I know we have people visiting all over the place. Most therapists like to see you either an established relationship or at least 3 sessions before, so they can have an accurate assessment of where you are and what's going on. So if they are going to complete that paperwork, that they can do it in a way that is giving a true picture of where you are and what you need. Okay. But FMLA that is there, if it gets to that space where your capacity is just at 0 and you can't really take it anymore. And you can take that 6 weeks off, maybe up to 12 usually. Every company is different. Check with your company and see what the policy is. But that option is there for you.
I think it's important to note this, Trinetta, that the EAP programs, a lot of people, and I think you and I talked about this yesterday, right? That people are afraid to take advantage of the EAP programs because they don't understand them. They feel like their companies are going to get the information back that you share with the therapist or the counselor, and that's not how that works at all. So we want to make sure that if you are taking advantage of your EAP program, that those sessions are confidential. Remember this, that when you are working with a licensed clinical therapist or mental health professional, we are bound to ethics that no company EAP can break for us. Okay, so it doesn't serve any to go back to your company and share what you said in therapy. So this is a different situation when you're specifically using an EAP.
And I want to go back and just say what EAP is, because not everybody knows what that is. So EAP is Employee Assistance Program, and usually it's a program where the employer pays for a certain number of sessions and covers those for you. Generally, most companies have it, and it varies between how many sessions they'll pay for. We've seen anything from 3 to 12 sessions that they will cover, and then you would then go into using your regular benefits. But every company typically has it. Contact the HR department, because they should have the information to tell you who to call to get to access those EAP services. But yes, like Sharonda was saying, we can't share records with them. It's confidential, so they won't know any of your business.
So don't y'all be trying to get fake healing, just going just to go. Come on to therapy and get well soon, right? Because when you get better and you can manage and work through the toxicity or the trauma that you gain from that toxicity, then you can make those strategic decisions to exit and be able to do something differently. Or you can use your EAP time and come on to the rest.
True. And on that note, we will wrap it up with that. This has been great, y'all. The conversation, we are always having a good time and laughing and having an impactful conversation and sharing our experiences. And we thank you for joining us tonight. But yes, if you are in a place where you feel like you are burned out, and the way you thought success was supposed to be is not quite adding up how you thought you wanted it to be. Whether you're a leader, and we are all leaders, whether you're leading in the workplace, whether you're leading at home as a mom or a wife, or even if you're no children as auntie, we're always leading in some capacity. I am hosting the Rest, Revive, and Restore Retreat. It's going to be in Delray Beach, Florida, on September 14th through the 16th, coming up here. And look, here's a little cool QR code. So if you want, right now we're running out. Y'all, I love Christmas.
Yeah.
So I'm usually playing Christmas music in June. Folks don't understand it, but I love Christmas. I'm playing Christmas music.
Yes.
So we're having the Christmas in July promo. So right now, the Christmas in July promo is $1,500 to attend the retreat. It includes your room with your private balcony all to yourself. But you get an extra $375 off if you use this QR code here. So you'll pay for $11.25 for the retreat. So that is going on for the rest of this month. You get additional $375 off of the retreat. We all will be there. Me, Sharonda, Danny, and Kim, and we will have a special feature as well, where we have a panel where we talk about it's called Where My Squad At, where we will talk about the impact and the power that comes from having a community of women of color, that we come together and what we can accomplish together and the benefits and how can you find your own. So if you want to come, put yourself first for a few days. Tell your bae, your husband, the job that I got to go away for a few days to take care of me and let your hair down, and just let's talk about how we can redefine what success looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you need your bae to come with you, so after you rest and revive, then you could go ahead and bring him. Then when you get to spend that time, you might be more free.
Maybe. I guess maybe so. Yes. But it's been wonderful, y'all, to chat with y'all tonight. Please share. Thanks, Lori, for joining us tonight. I'm glad you enjoyed the conversation. And y'all, my mama always as a good supporter. Sabrina, she prays for us all, y'all.
We love Sabrina.
Yes, all the time, Mama. Thank you.
Yes, until next time. And if y'all missed the first conversation, the first Fireside chat that we had last week, that was I'm Not Your Superwoman, you need to go back and listen to that one too and watch it. It was also amazing. And so catch that too. And then we'll see y'all again maybe next Thursday. We'll let y'all know. Danny said yes. We'll see y'all next Thursday. Y'all have a good night.
Good night.